Hey, here's how you can create catchy vocal chops all the time, every time. I promise once you watch this video till the end, you'll learn what makes vocal chops catchy and how you can create them yourself. Let's get into it. Now, the first big tip for creating catchy vocal chops is to never go in blank. You always need a foundation to build them on. Vocal chops are, most of the time, just a top-line melody. Coming up with catchy melodies out of thin air is difficult. However, building melodies on top of chords is 1,000 times easier, so you want to approach creating vocal chops the same. For example, you may already have a drop entirely produced out or some cool chords written out that you could put vocal chops on top of. In my case, I'm in a completely blank FL Studio project, so instead of jumping right into creating the vocal chops, I'll quickly grab a piano loop or guitar loop so that I have something to build the chops on top of. By the way, for this video I'll only be using our free packs so everyone can follow along. I'll link every pack we use in the description below. So I'm just going to jump right into our Hearts guitar loop toolkit, which comes with 50 crazy good guitar loops, a few older legacy loops and some useful single note loops. This is one of those packs that shouldn't be free but is. So yeah, let me quickly go through the loops and find one to get started. I really like this loop right here, let's go with that one. The loop is at 95 BPM, so let's adjust the tempo in FL Studio to match that. Now, with a foundation laid out for our vocal chops, we can actually start creating them. To create vocal chops, you obviously need some sort of vocal sample to chop up. What you use is completely up to you. You could use a full royalty-free vocal sample off of Splice, or if you're remixing another song, you could chop up the vocal stem. All of that works, however, if you've never done this before, you know that it's actually the most challenging part. There are only a handful of small sections and little snippets of a vocal sample that actually sound great when chopped up. Around 90% of a vocal sample sounds terrible when you're trying to use them for your vocal chops. So here's the second big tip or hack, just chop up another vocal chop loop. That's right, instead of combining through long vocal tracks, trying to use the small bits and pieces that actually sound good for vocal chops, just grab a pre-made vocal chop loop where all that work has already been done for you. Then you simply re-chop it to make it your own. For that, I'll dive into our vocal chop toolkit. Again, this is a pack full of catchy vocal chop loops that you can download for free. I really like loop number 18 right here, so let's go with that one. Now, how you chop up the loop is again up to you. There's no right or wrong here, so you could just drag it right into the playlist and start messing with the sample there. In FL Studio, we have a few cool plugins like Fruity Slicer and Slice X that can auto chop the loop for us. So I'm just going to right click the loop and hit open in new Slice X channel. If I hit a few random notes on my MIDI keyboard now, you can hear how each note plays back a single chop. Before we hop onto the piano roll and start creating vocal chops, let's ensure the pitch of our vocal chop loop matches the one of the guitar loop. The guitar loop is in F sharp minor and the vocal chop loop is in D sharp minor. So we could either pitch the guitar loop down 3 semitones or pitch the vocal loop up 3 semitones. I'll go with the vocal chop loop. So in Slice X, I can use the pitch slider in the corner right here to pitch it up by 300 cents, which is 3 semitones. Now if I play some notes, all the chops are turned to F sharp minor. Let me also put a reverb on the chops here so that things sound less harsh. Let's hop into the piano roll next, where we'll create our vocal chop melody. In here, let's first remove all the notes that Slice X adds by default. Now, here's the important part and the next big tip. As mentioned earlier, vocal chops are just essentially your top line melody. Just like how you might have a cool synth lead playing your melody, your vocal chops will also play a melody. So, to make them catchy, you'll want to follow the same principles that make regular melodies catchy. You may have heard these before, but the main principles are number 1, keep it simple, number 2, make it repetitive, and 3, give it a structure via call and response. So let's dive into all that using our example. I always like to start with the middle section right here. It's the second to third beat in a bar that you can easily repeat throughout the entire vocal chop melody. To visualize things, I'm going to switch the MIDI keyboard note color to this pink. Okay, so I think these 4 chops sound quite nice, so let's repeat them through all 4 bars and give it a quick listen. It's repetitive, but that's what's going to make it catchy. Now, I mentioned that you want to give your melody a structure using simple call and response techniques. The most common melody structures are probably A-B-A-C, A-B1, B2, B3, and A1, A2, A1, B. You can take any catchy song out there, and 99 times out of 100, the melody of that song will fit one of those structures. For this example, let's go with the simplest structure, A-B-A-C. So for our first bar, which is our A, let's keep the first beat empty like that since I like how it sounds, but let's add something to the 4th beat to fill it out a bit more. I like how this sounds. So let's move on to the 2nd bar, which is our B. Adding this 1 chop on the first beat and the same last chop on the 4th works great here. I removed the chop right before the last chop since I think that slight decay or pause there is pretty cool. Our 3rd bar is again an A in our A-B-A-C structure, so I'll quickly add the same notes here that we added to our 1st bar. For our 4th bar, which is our C, I'll add the same note to the 1st beat and find something completely different for the 4th beat. I really like that. So here's what our full melody sounds like. You can always try out different keys and tempos, so I like to export the loop and simply mess around with it a bit. Slowing it down and speeding it up sounded quite cool, but I wasn't really feeling it. I think the original tempo works well already, however I like how it sounds when we pitch everything up 3 semitones. Now where you go from here is entirely up to you. Just hearing these chops over the guitar already sparks a few ideas in my head. Give me 2 minutes, which will just be a 1-second transition for you, to add more elements to this and build out the idea a tiny bit. Okay, so first of all I matched and added that little pause we had in the 2nd bar to the guitar loop. Next, I added this cool but simple saw bass. Then I added this tonal snare. I just filtered it a bit and added some reverb. And finally, this hi-hat loop, which I turned into more of a filtered percussion loop with some effects. Together, it sounds like this. Definitely nothing too crazy, but a cool and catchy idea for sure. To demonstrate how easy it is to create vocal chops using these tricks, let's start a new project and do it all again. So let's take a look at some other packs. I know we have some instrument loops and vocal chop loops in our huge Chroma sample library, so let's check out the free Chroma beta pack. I like this guitar loop again. Let's drag it into the playlist and add some reverb to it. Let's jump into the vocal chop loops folder next. I like this one, so let's right click and open it using Slice X. Now the guitar loop is in C sharp minor and the vocal loop is in F minor, so we can pitch either one by 4 semitones to make them match. Even though it would probably sound totally fine, I typically like to avoid pitching loops by more than 3 semitones. So let's pitch up the guitar loop by 3 to E minor, and the vocal chop loop down a semitone, also to E minor. We used the basic A-B-A-C structure in the previous example, so let's try out a different structure here. Let's go with the A, B1, B2, B3 structure. The first bar, RA, will be our only cool here, so let's try and find some cool chops for it. There's definitely a bit of trial and error going on, but I like these chops here. This feels like a solid cool. So let's go to the second bar and do the response for this melody. This works and sounds quite nice. Since we're going for an A, B1, B2, B3 structure, let's just copy the second bar and paste what we have over to the third and fourth bar as well. I actually like how this sounds already. I'm just going to add some very slight variation to the third bar, like this maybe. Yeah, this works. That's it. Let's play the whole loop for context. Again, this is pretty catchy and I already have countless ideas in my head about what this could be turned into. So, I'll be right back. Okay, first I added this Alter Boy plugin to the vocal chops and automated the formant. Since our melodies B part is quite repetitive, I thought manipulating the format there would be cool. I also exported our vocal chops, pitched up that render by an entire octave, distorted it and made it super wide. I basically did the same thing for the guitar loop. I duplicated it, pitched it up an octave, then added a ton of distortion and made it wide. I then added this pattern right here, which contains a nice gritty bass, which I just filtered down a bit with an EQ. In here, we also have this cool pluck, which I just crushed with distortion and drowned in reverb. Finally, I also added this cool percussion loop from our chroma pack at the bottom here. All of that together sounds like this. Again, it's a pretty dope song idea that I just threw together in a few minutes. The mix could definitely need some work, but the idea is there all thanks to these techniques that allow you to easily create inspiring vocal chop loops. But yeah, that's pretty much it. That's how you can create your very own catchy vocal chop loops. Bye for now.